In this series then, I'm going to be delving into awards that people have earned during past operational tours. I really want to make a conscious effort to focus in on the most sort of previous years, 20, 30 years-ish, because it's more recent history, and I believe that'll be more poignant to anyone who's potentially looking to step up and serve, or maybe you have or currently are still serving, and these people could be in and around you, walking around you. And for some people, whether it's like a formal parade or a formal day, they'll see certain soldiers within or officers within their battalions, regiments, corps, whatever it may be, and they'll just have a different medal on their chest, and like, oh, you'll ask your buddy, oh, what's that? Oh, that's an MC. And like, oh, all right, okay, and you don't know anything to do with it. Unless you jump on Google and you go deep dive and trying to search for it, you're never really going to find it. And this is what I'm going to do. And what I want to do is bring the individuals who won their awards, their citations. So today's one, I'm going to be batting for the home team. It's going to be discussing a soldier who's still currently serving within the Royal Irish Regiment. And it is currently, as it stands now, W01 Robert McClurg. The important thing to note when I start reading these, and you'll see it whenever I talk about the ranks, and that's the reason, another reason why I want to read these out, is it wasn't W01 McClurg when the award was won, it was Corporal McClurg, so junior NCO. And in particular, as I go over this series, that's a key point I want you to focus in. And if you're not in the British Army or the British military, you have no idea what that is, and you're one of the foreign sort of people who watch the channel, a junior NCO is exactly what it says. It's someone who's junior, their junior command. That could be anything from a 20-year-old up to 25, 26. And normally then people start looking at promoting on beyond that. But that's the kind of age group you're looking at. And you're looking there for definitely a corporal, and you're potentially looking at someone who's only served there between 6 to 7-ish years within the military as such. So that's what you're looking at. And then when I start reading through this, you'll quite see that's the sort of mindset of someone who's in and around that sort of age group. And it probably would go against the argument whenever we talk about the younger generation is just so different. They can't step up to the mark and X, Y, Z. Whenever I was going through this time, because I was alive, I was on the same operation as this, just in a different area of the country. I was sort of slightly younger, so I could also say that the generation that was going through, we would have been labelled the PlayStation generation. So same again, it would have been like, oh, they're not going to step up to do anything, blah, 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 or they're too interested in computers and gaming, all the rest of it. But then obviously you have people doing this. And this is not just one, there's many, many more through Herrick, which is the Afghanistan campaign, and Telek. So as the weeks progress, as we go into 2025, I will be doing the odd video of this kind of stuff, but it just takes me time to grab it, speak to the person who got it, because in the British military, we are very, I'd say 99% of people are very like, when we start reading things out like this, because we're not, we're very, I don't know what the word you could use for, humble in winning stuff, and not actually stepping up to go, okay, that's good, thanks very much for that. The other sort of point about this is, regards to this one is, so Rob McClurg, it comes from the same sort of area as I do in Northern Ireland, in around Clockey and Portavogie. So if you're not aware of that, they're very small villages. So to have someone sort of step up, disappear off to serve, to do this and then win this award from such a small little village is quite cool as well. He would have been, in school terms, I probably would have been about first year of secondary school, and he would have just been leaving to go off join the army. So there's probably about 4 or 5 years difference, and obviously in school years that's like, oh, a lifetime, but as you become an adult you realise, flip me, it's actually not that long. But he was sort of, you could argue, Fallabella, clearing away from our small fishing village and away off to go. And I think currently as it stands now in our battalion, Royal Irish, there's only ever been him, me, someone else, so like 4 of us from that sort of village. Right, without further ado, I'm gonna write you now this citation. I'm not gonna write it, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read the citation. Date of action or period covered by the citation: July to August 08, so 2008. The place was Musakala, Helmand Province. And as it says here, Corporal Robert William McClurg. Here we go. So, Corporal McClurg was a soldier in a 6-man operational mentoring and liaison team, OMLT, and if you were there in that era, we used to nickname them the omelettes. So like an omelette, egg omelette. Mentoring an Afghan National Army, ANA, company in Helmand Province. So let's break that down. I'm just going to go to Corporal McClurg. He was part of a 6-man team, and they would have been attached to a company of Afghan soldiers. So a company, off the top of my head, if it's just a rifle company, you're probably talking about upwards about 80 or 90 soldiers in there of Afghan soldiers. If you're talking British Army terms and we're talking operationally focused, that's when you have all your attachtees in, like all the rest of it, that come to make a big, massive deployable operational company. This probably wouldn't look like that back then because the Afghans didn't have all the different trades and stuff and specialists that they do now. But back then, you were still talking a lot of people there for six people. And don't forget, junior NCO still, corporal, so he's probably mid-20s. Does it say his age anywhere? No, but I would say he's probably mid-20s. During the intense dry heat of July 2008, McClurg's team was based at the austere and isolated patrol base South, the southern security outpost for Musakala. He was frequently at the centre of heavy fighting. On the 26th of July 2008, McClurg was part of a Kandak battalion operation to clear the village of Dangyan. For much of the battle, McClurg was in the eye of the storm. With his OC heavily involved in coordinating fires, McClurg stepped up to act as a primary mentor for the assaulting ANA, Afghan National Army. Okay, so what that means then, so McClurg's OC, so OC standing for Officer Commanding, how he was sort of controlling fires. In army term, fires is your indirect fire, so artillery and all the rest of it. So the OC would have been speaking to, the forward air, that's fast air, the JTAC and all the people who make up the fires team from the artillery would have been attached to the OC. They would have been coordinating that. Okay, so that's what I mean about fires. So Rab then has obviously stepped up then to be the lead for the assault in ANA. Assault, we've got to break it down, it's probably a platoon in a company if we're looking at a company text. Okay, McClurg then quickly identified that he was facing a series of fortified positions with interlinked trenches and bunkers. Suddenly, his group was fired upon and took casualties, including the ANA commander, who became ineffective. So you've got a young junior commander here. They've taken, obviously, fire, and it's obviously accurate fire because it's caused casualties in and around the ANA, and then most importantly, their ANA commander. So that's not really great. And who then, obviously, it became ineffective. Undaunted, McClurg rallied his force, directed and leading a series of frontal and flanking assaults over a period of 6 hours. He covered a distance in excess of 2 kilometres, fighting through 17 defended compounds, and defied enemy flanking counterattacks and mortar fire. A total of 30 enemy were killed and 13 wounded as a result of the Kandak operation that day. McClurg's intervention turned the battle. His command, firepower, and example inspired the ANA, giving them the confidence to unpick the enemy from their defences. Shortly after, McClurg moved to join the ANA Surge Company mentor team based in Musakala District Centre. He swiftly found himself involved in further Kandak operations, this time to the north of Musakala. Let's just unpack that first paragraph then. Okay, so massive big attacks going on down. They've taken considerable fire, effective fire, because he's had casualties around him. The commander's becoming ineffective. He stood up and he drove them on. Now, don't forget, this is a company of Afghan soldiers. You're talking like 80, 90 people, 6-man team of British lot in here now. And then him now, so a junior NCO, driving a different nationality, language barrier. Having interpreters is great, but it's good whenever you're teaching like in a lesson kind of thing. But when you're in the heat of battle, when everything's happening so quick and everything's going that way, you are then, I would argue, leading people with just getting amongst it, because there's not time to really explain things in depth. Now, it lasted 6 hours, so there would have been sort of lulls in that battle where he would have had time to speak to people and stuff. But that just shows you where a junior NCO has just stepped up to the mark and has done everything the British Army and the infantry in our specific point in this one, seizing the initiative and then just getting amongst it. So there we go. So he's done that. That's a Kandak, battalion. Yeah, just make sure I got it right there. Yeah, so it was a Kandak operation there. Okay, so that was 26th of July. So we're now moving on to on the 3rd of August. I'm going to continue reading now. So starting off now at 3rd of August. So that's what, 30 days, September, June, November, all the rest, 31. 4 days there. So it's 5-day operation, you would argue, and then a couple of days off, and then straight into this one. So on the 3rd of August 2008, his team was pushing through the urban desert to provide flank protection for a Kandak advance. So a Kandak, I think I was not part of the Omelette teams in 2008. I was doing a different role. Kandak is obviously a battalion advance. That's what this is. Mastiff vehicles in support were disabled by an IED strikes, and the enemy initiated a flanking assault. Withering machine gun fire raked the Kandak from the flank. So this battalion is advancing forward. There may have been a lull on it because the Mastiffs have been hit by an IED, which then pins someone down, which then allows the enemy forces then to start off their ambush. And they've been raked, so they've got very accurate machine gun fire now smashing the Kandak battalion. And if you read the start of it, they're in the middle of the desert, so there might not be as much natural cover or man-made cover to take. Raked from the flank. Pinning down TAC HQ and 2 companies. So TAC HQ then would be the British tactical element. So that's where you have your OC, which is a major, and all his sort of team in there, which control all the fires, all them kind of people. So they're obviously now pinned down by this machine gun fire, as well as 2 companies. So 2 companies ANA and our TAC. It's going to be pretty intense machine gun fire. The enemy recoilless rifle and rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs, were brought to bear. Seeing an opportunity, McClurg began a move east to counterattack. Pushing north through scattered compounds, McClurg engaged the enemy. He then coordinated fire support as he led the ANA onwards. McClurg's counterattack killed several Taliban and halted the enemy assault, allowing the advance to continue. Then McClurg organised hasty defensive positions, coordinated further fires in support of the main advance. So you've got the Kandak, which is a battalion. Obviously, they're moving forward. We're trying to build this picture in our minds. You've got Mastiffs moving along. They get hit by IED strike. That then disables them. It doesn't specify for any casualties within them, but Mastiffs would be British driving them and British operated. That will obviously lull and stop the Kandak advance. That's then they're now going to paint themselves a target because they've now gone static. They've obviously, the IED went off in a certain place where the enemy forces wanted it to go off because they've got their ambush set up. They've now ambushed the Kandak. They've pinned down TAC HQ. They're the people who call in all this sort of indirect fire and all the rest of it. So they've pinned them down. So they're taking that away, and they're also pinned down the two ANA companies. So Rab here then, obviously the junior NCO, let's think about this again, young 20-ish years of age, disappears off with this and pushing the ANA forward and really cracking the whip. And anyone who's been in combat before, or you've been in that contact, you can't. There can be a lot of, say, fog of war, or a lot of people getting very stuck up and freeze a little bit. And it doesn't matter how hardened they are, they could just freeze up. So now you've got this sort of junior NCO running around, seizing initiative, cracking the whip, pushing the ANA forward. And quite rightly, they probably would not have needed a lot of driving because they're very, they're born into warfare. But for them then to go forward and do that job with him would have spoke massively about his character, because they're a different culture, and if they're willing to follow him, then he was doing something right. He's went through all these different compounds and he's directed them, and that's the main thing here. He's not going and doing, he's putting his sort of thought process and conceptual thinking into pushing these guys forward, and then establishing hasty defences to allow breathing space for the Kandak battalion then to resort its life out, and that sort of TAC team then to square itself away so it can get the fires and all the rest of it. So it's little things like that can turn the tide in battle, which is probably rightly why it's wrote in here and why it's led to him ultimately being rewarded. Okay, next paragraph then. Just days later, McClurg again found himself in a Kandak operation to the south. This time, his patrol cleared through the village of Dagyan. So we're back here again. A known enemy stronghold. As McClurg's team reached the southern edge of the village, they came under heavy machine gun and RPG fire from further south. The ANA were unable to identify the firing point and began to panic. McClurg steadied the ANA and called in indirect fire to support their move across open ground. He then organised volley RPG and 66mm rocket fire to enable a break into a compound, which had been identified as the enemy's firing point. Due to McClurg's aggressive leadership of the ANA, the enemy fled from the assault and were engaged by an attack helicopter as they moved into secondary positions. Once again, McClurg organised a hasty defence, allowing the ANA commander to regain control. McClurg was involved in many incidents of a similar magnitude. His calm, selfless leadership style and great personal courage repeatedly salvaged deteriorating situations, which would have led to the loss of ANA and UK lives. McClurg was hugely influential. He is worthy of the highest official recognition for his outstanding and gallant actions in several fierce battles. That's it. So just to unpack that last bit, you've seen there's sort of different sort of paragraphs there explaining about all those different operations. And we look at the initial date, so it was it says in the initial one, July to August 08, but when you break it down, on the 26th of July 08 was the very first entry there, and then the next one was the 3rd of August. If you think back into them deployment ages, that's rolling from operation to operation. So that's like smash out an operation, what's it, for like 4 or 5 days there, a turnaround of, estimate orders, all the rest of it, and going straight into it. And then it's like each time deploying, it's near, you can see the same thing. It's where these everything's going to go wrong. No plan survives contact, which quite clearly happens in all these sort of examples. And every single time he steps up to the mark and he just drives forward, and you can quite clearly see how that's written. And even more so in this, where there's other people, other nations, and other cultures involved there in regards to the ANA, and getting that many people to go and do a certain thing, specifically under a hail of machine gun fire and RPGs and all the rest of it, it takes some doing. So that's a big one there, and that's 2008. So I'll do the maths there and how long ago that was. I'm not going to go through my quick maths now. But that's your recent history. So if you are someone who's currently serving and just looking around your battalion, your regiment, your corps, there may be people around this sort of the higher ranks now who are walking around with these kind of medals, and it's just good to know what went in behind that. And quite clearly they always say, some people, when you speak to these people personally who won them, they're kind of like, well, I was just doing my job. And you'll hear that all the time. And that goes just to show just how humble the British soldier is when they go and do something that deserves recognition like this. And so there we go. This is the very first one. So please, if you did get something from this kind of video and you want to see more of it, and more specifically, if you've got suggestions for me, specifically if you're a veteran, you know anyone, or you know any where there's access to citations, and we can speak to the people who won them, all that kind of stuff, I would really be honoured and love to get them and to bring them onto the channel so we can sit and read about it, talk about it together, and hopefully maybe one day I'll do a bit of a podcast with them and bring them actually onto the show as well, and we can sort of talk about it. But if we're not wanting to do that, more importantly, read it, digest it, and just really acknowledge all the good work that's been done to people who served and who are continuing to serve. Thanks so much for joining me. And if you're just new here to the channel, this is your very first video, you can find so much more on the channel in regards to the military, British Army in specific. But if you're just a big supporter of the military, wherever you are in the world, this is the channel for you. Please consider subscribing. Thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you again on the next video. See you then.